Well, let's go ahead and just go ahead and get started as people are trickling in here. Hey, folks, I'm Jeff Graham. I'm with Smashing Magazine here, and I'm just like really super excited because I got Heydon Pickering here. And gosh, Heydon, I'm like super nervous because I've known your name for quite a while, and I think we've even kind of brushed shoulders in some in some communities and whatnot, but we've never actually
Yeah.
crossed paths. And
No, no, I don't think we've actually spoken, at least not
no.
anyway. Yeah.
Not at all. So this is, like really exciting for me because it feels like, 10 years of like built up, like, oh my gosh, I have so many things to ask this guy. And um
I
because I'm
won't
such a
have any
fan.
answers probably, but yeah,
Oh,
we
well,
can try.
maybe we can both look like the blind leading the blind in this, in
Yeah.
terms of yeah, okay, good. Good. We're all on the same page then. I totally appreciate that. Well, we all know that you're a developer. I mean, duh, that's kind of why you're here in some sense. You're front ender, but more than that, you've had a like really extensive background you've done some like really big projects that have had a lot of visibility to them, like inclusive design principles. You got inclusive components. You've had Cupper, from like way back when.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, which I remember that, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm glad you
Also,
remember that one because
yeah,
that's the one that yeah, I put a lot of work into that, and unfortunately I didn't take it as far as perhaps I'd like because it was something that I
yeah,
did with like the inclusive design principles. Actually, it's something that I drew up whilst I was working with the Paciello group, and so a
yes,
lot of that stuff is sort of now in their kind of wheelhouse. I think I still have access to the repository, but yeah, I
great.
just kept
Yeah.
trying to write and rewrite documentation basically, or
And
documentation
specifically,
builders.
yes, for
Yeah,
accessibility, right? Specifically.
yeah. So it was I kind of was approaching it from the point of view of I just wanted to something to build documentation because actually most of my work is as a technical writer these days, more so than like a straight up developer. So it's more working on design systems and actually documenting best practices and things like that. And yeah, I wanted a tool that would allow me to generate documentation per se, but with features that made it really easy to kind of reference stuff to do with accessibility. So yeah, like short codes for like plonking in WCAG criteria and
Yeah.
like color matching stuff and like contrast stuff and that kind of thing, really, I suppose. And I mean, I still use a tool which is sort of based on Cuppa when I do audits sometimes
Oh,
for
interesting.
companies.
Yeah.
So that's still some of my work is like, I'd be given some sort of web property which is not optimally accessible, and then I'm supposed to go through it and try and work out what all the
Document.
problems are. Yeah. I've actually started using Notion quite a bit for doing that because Notion's quite powerful with the uh relational database stuff.
Yes,
So you can have
that's
like a
100%.
yeah,
Yeah.
I have to say I really like it.
Those and
But
roll ups like are so helpful.
yeah, exactly.
Before you
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So no, in Notion, yeah. So I built a
yes.
system in Notion for doing that, and
Oh, have you
it
templated that?
yeah. So I made a template for it, and it's actually for sale. It's
Oh
like
gosh,
30
let's
euros or
link it
something.
up.
I'll see if I
Yeah,
can
well, I mean,
find a
it doesn't
link
have to be
for it.
right this moment, but yeah, totally. I mean, I'd love to check that thing out
Yeah.
too.
No, I'll find it and put it in the chat later.
Oh,
But
that's rad.
yeah, I found it really useful for doing that kind of thing. Yeah, like you say, the roll up stuff. So
Yep.
you've got your database, which is full of the generic WCAG
Junk.
criteria, and then
Yeah.
maybe you've got a database which is your testing, like
Yep.
your actual, like you can set up individual tests
Oh,
that you
interesting.
may have performed on whatever the client's property is, and then link to the WCAG table,
Yeah.
and then maybe link to some manual testing
Oh
criteria.
yeah. And with all
It's
the
kind
the,
of cool.
the automated rules too, to say conditionally, if you can autofill this field, based on
Hmm.
what the value of this one is, it's actually becoming pretty darn powerful there and almost
Yeah.
reactive in a sense, which is really cool. And it's funny that we just like pinned right onto accessibility documentation and documentation in general, because that's kind
Mm.
of a sorry state in the industry in general. Like since
Yeah.
making Cupper, like was that part of a reaction to the current state of documentation? And do you see documentation like improving at all as a technical writer yourself?
Um, Not really, no. I mean, I find it really frustrating reading documentation
Yes.
for most things. It'd be usually be something like a JavaScript library or something that for whatever reason I've decided to explore. And I just don't understand what the people who've written it are asking me to do, if you sort of mean. And it's just I actually started making a list called Your Documentation is Shit. And it was just all of these different things that I'd encountered, which specifically really annoyed me.
Yeah.
Like bad patterns in documentation.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
then sometime later, my friend Amy Hugh, who's a really great content designer, and she project manages design systems quite frequently as well. Um, they had written a talk called "Your Documentation is Shit." So it was like great minds think alike. So I said, "Oh, I've got
Yeah.
some notes on that." So I sent her my
Just a few
list.
notes, right?
Yeah, it was in Notion actually. It was quite a, it was like it was scrollable certainly.
An infinite canvas of just notes.
Yeah. Well, that I mean, yeah, if you put an infinite scroll thing in your documentation, that would be a worry as well. But yeah,
That's trouble.
but yeah, so I said, look, I'm probably because I have all of these ideas all the time for like, oh, I could turn this into a book or I could turn this into a course or whatever. And that one was going to be about shitty documentation and what to do about it. And then when I found that Amy was already doing that, and I knew that her approach to presenting that stuff is always really engaging and funny
Yeah.
anyway. So I just said, look, if it's any use to you, here's my list of just things I've found in documentation that pissed me off. I might be able to just find it now. I'm going to try and find
Oh
it
yeah.
on my other
I,
screen and see if
it
there's any bits in it which are, oh, hang on.
yeah, you don't
No,
get
it's
a whole
somewhere
lot
in my
of
Notion.
documentation on documentation these days, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like,
It
what
does get
is
a bit
the
meta.
incorporated documentation? I don't know. You just do a Notion page and it's infinite scrolling and you just keep it going. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
way to do it.
So the one thing about Notion, though, I was going to say before is it does. Oh, I'm trying to see if I can find it. Your docs are shit. There you go. Your docs are shit.
Ah,
Um, yeah. The problem with Notion, and a lot of people gave me some feedback about this, was when I started selling that template, they're like, "Well, but why have you used Notion to do this? Because Notion's not accessible itself." Like,
oh,
and the thing is, nothing's 100% accessible,
no.
right? Notion does have some notable shortcomings, but then so do most things which are kind of
Oh yeah.
rich, well, writing editor type things where you have like contextual menus and that sort of stuff.
Yes.
It's very difficult to get that stuff to be accessible. Not that they shouldn't try, and they are trying, and they are trying to improve stuff, is my understanding. But understandably, some folks were like, well, I like the idea of this tool in principle, but I can't use this, or
Yeah.
I don't want to support it because it's using an inaccessible platform. And from my point of view, it's like, well, people use Notion already anyway. Like I use
Yeah.
Notion.
Oh,
If
for
they're
everyday
using it
stuff.
already,
Yeah.
then it just sort of meets them where they're at. And if someone wants my accessibility advice or services
Yeah.
not incorporating Notion, then I can offer that as well,
Oh,
you know.
sure. Well, that
But
stuff can also be exported out in some way, right? And consumed in alternative formats, roughly. But at the
yeah.
same time, like accessibility is very contextual too, you know, which is why it's so hard to like, you know, nail down and say like, oh yeah, this is 100%, you know, everything, every kind of, you know, impairment is accounted for in this. We have a
Hmm.
user story for every single thing. And for you, like as someone who's worked on inclusive components and stuff like how
Hmm.
does it, you know, how do you reconcile, you know, like imperfect from a good accessible experience, because
Oh,
there is this like holy grail, right?
yeah. So my friend Lainey Watson always says it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be better than yesterday, right? So I think there's this unfortunate thing where a lot of people avoid trying to incorporate accessibility into their work, not because they don't think it matters, and not because they don't think it's something that someone should do. It's just that they don't want to be the one to do it because they're worried that they're going to get it wrong.
Oh,
So it's
100%.
like, if I take on this responsibility, then I might be letting down some vulnerable people, you know.
Oh yeah, which
And
is a natural feeling. Yeah.
yeah, and that is a totally understandable thing. But then unfortunately when you get like everyone is like wanting to pass the buck, like, oh no, I don't know about this stuff, you know. I
Oh,
think we
and
should do someone else, then it
you
never gets
find an
done.
edge case somewhere, and then yes, like it just snowballs from that point forward, and then all of a sudden you feel
Yeah.
crappy. So you're like, oh, I just ruined 10 people's day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No.
So like Leonie always points it out, but I think it's a good message in general. It's just try and make it, just improve it. Like, and I do say at the beginning of that book, the inclusive components book, I
Yeah.
say, look, I'm the point of this book is that I'm exploring and bringing to bear hopefully some useful experience um to building these generic components for design systems, or for web interfaces. And this is, as I'm approaching it, this is how I would the things I would think about as I'm approaching
Yeah.
it, and the things I would try to incorporate, because I know that they're going to otherwise be barriers. But I didn't want people to think
Yeah.
these components are definitely like they're the perfect component. This guy's an
Yes.
expert. These are perfect components. If I
Well,
use this, then I'm not going to get into any trouble of any kind, or that
it
kind of
puts
thing.
the onus on someone else very heavily,
Mm,
and then at that point it almost abstains the responsibility of a sort to say, like, well,
yeah,
this professional advocate put this demo out. I'm going to just use this thing. I'm going to drop this component in because this was a bona fide example from 2017 on this expert's website,
yeah,
and we don't know because
yeah,
that example isn't maintained, or maybe things have changed, or technologies change, or something else. And it is a practice unto itself, and that's why we have full-time accessibility experts on this, and why it is a
yeah.
discipline on the web as very much as typography or layout or
Mhm.
content, whatever else. Like we all need these different roles to work in harmony. And I find that oftentimes it's more of a you know batting, or like bashing heads together, as opposed to collaborating and trying to figure out how do we make these disciplines work together, because we all have strengths in these areas.
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. And actually, talking about collaboration,
yeah,
that's something I say to folks who may reach out to me about some accessibility thing, and they're sort of like, sorry to bother you, but I just don't, in this specific situation, I don't know how to kind of go about this. And
sure.
I always actually really appreciate people doing that, because I'm thinking about this stuff quite frequently anyway, and it's useful to have a soundboard. So they're approaching me like as it, because I don't know, there's no absolute answer to any of this anyway. So then you have this opportunity to kind of explore it together, if you see what I mean. And that,
Absolutely.
that way, some of those sort of like casual, like, just DMing on social media or whatever, sometimes turn into a thing where we both go away thinking, oh, I know how to do this better now. And
Oh,
independent,
absolutely.
we wouldn't have been able to work it out. So I'm not being an expert. I'm not sort of just
Yeah.
saying to them, this is how you do it, go forth
No,
and
you're
multiply
on a
it.
journey,
But,
right? You're on your own learning journey through this.
yeah,
um
exactly. And that's why I write in general. That's why I write.
yes.
Like when I start a book, I don't know the subject. I
Exactly
mean, I
right.
know I
Yes.
know some of it,
Well,
and I
some of it, yeah,
am
sure.
interested enough in it. But I
Yeah.
but I the point is that if you're going to release a book, you better fucking learn the subject. So
Well,
it's a reason to learn it. Yeah.
well, that's become table stakes just for blog posts in general.
Mm,
Because again, like, I mean, I see this all the time, even on a site like CSS Tricks, right? I mean, that site has historically been a learning journey. Yet at the same time,
mm.
it's also viewed very much as an authority of sorts, and as like, no, if you say this, that's the way it is. It's like, no, the site's called CSS Tricks. We're kind of pushing things and learning, and
Yeah.
it's not always going to work out 100%. And sometimes the resolution is going to be a little messy. But that's
Yeah.
the start of the dialogue, and But at the same time, you still get all those, hey, your blog post is inaccurate. It's like, well, yeah, I said at the very top it's going to be inaccurate,
Yeah.
so those types of things, the expectations, I guess, are hard to set, because every site's a little different, or every blog's a little different in what they're trying to
Yeah,
accomplish.
absolutely. And I think actually there's a lot in the name CSS tricks.
Yeah.
I've been a huge follower of Chris's work
Oh yeah.
for a very long time, and always admired what he's been able to do with that. And the word trick is really interesting to me, because I think it captures something in
Yeah.
that. And I'm going to deliver a keynote talk about this subject later in the week,
We're at.
in Bristol. But it's about this left brain, right brain thing. Have
Yeah,
you heard
sure.
that model, that
Oh yeah.
theory? And you have,
Absolutely.
supposedly you have people who have they're like assigned right brain people, which means they're creative, and then you have assigned left brain people who are logical.
And
And it's all
supposedly,
just
if you're
about
if you're
how that's
left-handed, you're right, and then if you're
yeah.
right-handed, you're left, like, supposedly.
Yeah, which is and it's not based on anything. And unfortunately, we organize we base the way that we organize ourselves, and we allot responsibilities to our roles and our vocations based around this kind of model, which is basically phrenology, which is basically eugenics. It's just nonsense. And one of the things that I think is really interesting, that comes out of that, is that this area of like working with web technologies creatively, like especially HTML and CSS, I suppose mostly
Yes.
CSS, um, it exists in this place which is neither formal,
Yeah.
kind of like computer science,
Document. Yeah. It's not.
or like in a tradition of like a humanities subjects. So it
Absolutely.
falls somewhere down the middle. It's somewhere outside or
It,
between these two assigned
it's
like brain
bizarre. It's a
hemispheres.
weird ethereal place to be, because
Mm,
I'll see, posts that, like we publish or write or whatever, cited in academic, stuff, and it's like, whoa, crap, I don't have a PhD, I don't even have a computer science degree, I'm a
mm,
designer, I'm a content person,
mhm.
more than anything, but yeah, you start seeing these things accumulate, and then a reputation starts to like form of sorts, and it may not be the one that you were out to portray in the first place.
Yeah,
uh
well, that's the thing, is that I mean, you introduced me as a developer, but my and
yeah.
I do development. I do front end development. Sometimes that's something that I'm asked to do. But my
Yeah.
background is that I did an art degree, and I was an artist, and really kind of the reason that I got into web technologies
Yeah.
is because that was a way to be creative,
Yes.
right? And it's
Totally
like this
was.
sort of powerful thing that you can make stuff which looks cool, or I mean, I'm
Back in the day,
experimenting
it
with
didn't
like
look all that cool, maybe, but
yeah, well, it varies, but
back then it seemed cool.
yeah, well, it was cool for the time, yeah.
Oh, it totally was. Tables, yeah, man.
But it was, but the point was like the last thing I was learning those technologies for was to become a professional like programmer or coder. Like that
Yeah.
was that was
Yeah.
not why I was interested in them. I wanted to create weird art stuff, and use the web as a way of disseminating that. And the
Yeah.
way that you learn how to do that was in terms of coming back to the CSS tricks thing,
Yeah.
was in terms of learning tricks, because
Yes.
that's what they were. They were like secret, like dark, un
Experiments almost.
yeah,
Yeah.
they were experimental, they were unsanctioned. Most like there were lots of hacks,
Yes.
like things like spacer gifts and things like that. It
Absolutely.
was so not institutionalized, and that was partly why it was so attractive. And even
Yeah.
now, there's no real. I don't. I mean, I think some universities now teach it, but they certainly didn't do. I mean, when I was in university, it was a split degree
Oh,
between it was darkroom, like traditional photography using darkroom, and like graphic design, uh, which involved some kind of like early GUIs for like making web stuff. So
Sure.
it was Macromedia, you know,
Yes,
when
I was
Macromedia
about to
had
say
stuff
it was
in,
probably
yeah.
all that.
Yeah. So there was a bit of Flash involved in my course and a bit of
Yes,
Dreamweaver, but it was
absolutely. It's
never teaching you how to code, but like the
no.
code is where it's at. Like that's where it really gets interesting, right? So
Oh, and
and that's
that's
art, and code is just
yeah.
a tool. But because it's code, as soon as you learn to code, people go, "Oh, well, you're not an artist now. You're not a designer." And that's what's
That's what
happened
I
to me,
found too.
honestly. It's like, but you can code, so you can't. You're not one of those people. You're not like a right brain. You must be a left brain. So you have to come. You have to be with us guys. And then
Oh,
I'm
that'll be a
surrounded by
great
people who
talk.
are like doing TypeScript and stuff, and I don't know what the fuck's going on with any of that. So
Oh, absolutely. No, we
yeah,
all have like our various strengths in these things, and they all, end
mm,
up, I mean, we all have our own tool sets too, and there's so many tools to do the same different types of tasks to
yeah,
them that even your approach is going to differ. Like it'd
mm.
be interesting to do a book of just, people's past or people's education or past career before becoming a web developer. It's like because it's never, I would, well, not never, never, but I'll just go and be just embellish here. Like no one ever comes from like a strict computer science background and then becomes a CSS engineer of sorts.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
might
it's
be
like
made responsible for CSS, but it was definitely
yeah,
never something you were interested in doing,
no,
or you
there's no
know,
degree in
yeah.
it. Yeah,
No,
and
no. As far as I'm aware, like especially not strictly in web technologies. I mean, there's code camps, right, and
yes,
that kind
code
of thing,
camps.
where you kind of do a crash course, and they do like 20 days on JavaScript and then half a day on CSS, and maybe
Well,
5 minutes on HTML.
yeah,
Yeah,
I know for my own students, I teach at a couple small schools in the area, and the students there, yeah, I mean, I'm going deep into CSS nerdery, on this stuff to make
yeah,
sure that they understand just how powerful it is. But also,
that's cool.
I just want to teach them. Sometimes you don't even need to know the CSS or this at all. You just need to know how to ask the right questions, and
Yeah,
and then you
yeah,
will find because a lot of us cut our teeth that way, by viewing source, right? And just asking
yeah.
questions and being like, well, we didn't even have a dev tools back then. I mean, when Firebug came out, that was like a holy crap. It's like an X-ray into
Yeah.
our, you know.
I remember Firebug very clearly. Yeah, yeah,
Oh
that was
yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Oh, it was a beautiful day when that came out.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden we all became little mini engineers in a sense that like we could
Well,
open this
it
stuff up.
accelerated learning so
Oh
much,
yeah.
because you could just see it all happening. Yeah, yeah.
And
You
yet,
didn't have to wait for something to upload with FTP and then
no.
like
Have you ever seen like dev tools or I mean in the past Firebug or anything like that institutionalized as a learning tool?
yeah, only in kind of like courses like the kind of thing that I would just elect to write and put out myself,
Yeah.
like I think someone did a course on it was like a sort of a master Chrome Dev Tools or something. It would have been one of the Google
It's
team, I think.
it's a great
Um,
great course to take. I
yeah, I
mean,
mean, there's still lots, especially like the performance profiling stuff and things like that.
yeah.
That I've just recently been thinking I need to get to know this a bit better because I've been working with the web audio API. I'm getting into
Yes.
a territory where it's getting a bit intensive with
And
like
we're gonna get
competitive events and things.
to a slide and demo of this stuff in just a bit, just so people know that you're gonna dive
Yeah,
into
yeah,
this
I've got
stuff a
a
little
few
bit.
bits and pieces to show you with that. Yeah. But
Yeah,
it's no, I'd love to understand that side of things a little bit better. The thing is
yeah,
like in terms of performance, in general for websites, I tend to incorporate that into my offering in terms of like saying, I can help you with accessibility and performance. And I'm not an expert in the sense that kind of like JavaScript profiling stuff, which is to do with
yeah,
garbage collection and everything,
yeah,
you kind of for most sites you don't even need to know that to be able to give advice about performance, because you really need to just say you need to compress your images, you need to
yeah.
include fewer images, people don't need to see all of this stock photo crap, and you need to get rid of Google Tag Manager,
Oh yes, please, because that just
And, and all of that third
democratizes
party.
the whole.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just get rid of
Yeah,
the third party stuff. Easier said than done because obviously
business.
the money people won't be interested in that. But I kind of find it really ironic with the tag manager thing because tag manager lets you. I hadn't really worked with it until I was
Yeah,
working. It was a client I was working with, big organization, and they were using tag manager, and I hadn't realized that tag manager allows you to kind of just inject like arbitrary bits of script. So you have this whole development team who have loads of things in place for security and for performance and best practices. But then the marketing team, they're just told you can press this button and it'll just
yeah,
chuck
yeah.
some JavaScript in here and then it'll be on all the pages. And
No
you think, well,
deployment
what was
needed.
the
Yeah.
point in yeah. And they
Oh,
did. They did too. So
oh, they jam so much stuff in there. I mean, I was asked to do a similar thing, all for like, okay, we need custom, event reading for like all this stuff and like every single button, add infinitum, you just have all kinds of like
yeah.
different triggers. And I'm like, do we really need to like measure anyway, whoops.
I mean,
I could totally get into, the weeds on that.
yeah, I mean, I'm not a business head at all.
Oh yeah.
Which is, which holds me back in some ways, but I tend to look at things still, even whether I'm working as a developer or as a coder or as a designer or whatever, I still sort of like see things as make it good, and then if it
Oh yeah.
deserves to have an audience, it will. And if it's not good, then you won't get an audience.
If you build it,
Don't
they will come, sort of thing, like a Field of
that kind
Dreams.
of thing, exactly.
You're
Yeah,
Kevin Costner and all the people.
yeah,
Okay, got it.
yeah. I'm a huge baseball fan. Well, that was baseball, wasn't
Same
it?
here. Oh yeah, I'm a big
Yeah,
baseball fan.
it's baseball, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were talking about it on a podcast I listened to the other day. Uh, Comedy Bang Bang. It's like a,
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Comedy Bang Bang.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah,
love that show.
and all the other outshoots that they do too.
Yeah,
With
like
some other stuff.
Freedom
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Totally.
really love that stuff. I listen to it as I'm working all the time.
Oh,
It's
of course.
sometimes you'd want voices, don't you? It's difficult to code with voices. Sometimes it's more instrumental music then, but
You know,
yeah.
do I remember correctly? You had a post once, and you're like, oh great, what did I say? About ambient music and
Oh
and and
wow.
and being able to like work around that. Was there something around that? Am I
Yeah,
incorrect?
you're right. Yeah, at the beginning of the pandemic, I got really into ambient music. This is a good segue
Yeah,
into talking about the music
yeah, it
stuff
is
I'm doing on,
actually.
I guess. But if I go to writing on my blog and I go way back,
Oh, there it
ambient
is.
burnout was so this
That's the
is
one. Yeah,
January 2020. So we just started in the UK to get like full on into COVID territory.
does not feel like that was 4 years ago. My gosh,
Yeah, I know, right? I
I
feel
feel like
like
I just
so
read this
much
last year or something.
life has passed me by since then. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's just a post about being burnt out and dealing with a pandemic and trying to recover, and how ambient music has always really helped me for doing that. Like both writing it because it's kind of like this weird stimming activity. It's not as involved as like composing a narrative piece of music. It's
Yeah.
really just about setting up oscillators and filters
Yes.
and letting things just sort of
Just moog it out, right?
generative, approaching it in a generative way, in a way. Actually, that was something I was going to show you, which I didn't know
Yeah.
whether you're aware of this, but so in Logic, have you used much Logic? Do you do
I've dabbled in Logic, but I still just mostly stick around in GarageBand.
Ah, yeah, okay, cool. So I don't know if GarageBand has anything similar, but there's this section here for each track, which is like your kind of MIDI plugin stuff. And there's this
Okay.
thing called Scripter. And when you open up Scripter, it gives you, oh, see, the problem is
Oh no.
my, it'll open it in in a different, oh, it's open.
Oh yes, and then you have to reshare that certain thing.
Logic does this to me all the time. Here we go. Here we go. No, it's all right. It was just popped up in the other window. But you can just write kind of
Oh my
arbitrary
gosh.
JavaScript inside Logic.
So
So
it has GTM baked into it.
GTM.
Google Tag Manager baked right into it, huh?
Yeah, you could drop some tracking code to see if anyone's listening to your music.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah.
Heat maps,
Um,
please.
so you have a couple of like generic functions. There's this handle MIDI function which it offers, but then you're just really, you can do some math.random stuff in there and that kind of thing. I use it for a few things. So I use it for, especially when writing ambient music, I use it
Yeah.
for fluctuating like the velocity. So
Okay.
I don't know if you were the term, but like the velocity of it is how hard it's hit, basically. Like if it's a piano,
Yes.
oh, yeah.
And and this could be also like into like a rotary cabinet of sorts, right? To
Oh, I
like
mean, you
to
could
like
plug that in as
oscillating it and
well. But
yeah.
yeah, no, so that's you're more in talking more sort of LFO territory, low
Yes.
frequency
Okay.
FO, but I'll get onto that. But
Yeah, sure.
but the yeah, so you could just tell it to just in this case, yeah, I've got this velocity, it's called velocity flux. You
Nice.
can tell it to randomize the velocity a bit. So it makes it more human. And you can give it, it's got this flux. I don't know how easy it is to see because it's all a bit small,
Oh,
but you
we can
got
see it.
max
Yeah.
flux radius. So if it's up to
Or
15, it will
radius.
be 15 below or 15 above
Interesting.
the kind of the
The
written
baseline.
velocity.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So then, for example, with a piano piece, so I've got a piano piece running here. Um, I'll turn off my microphone. You
Yeah.
might be able to hear it.
Uh, no, we're
Oh no.
yeah.
It might be that the trouble is with Logic is I wonder if it's mounted, it might have mounted Zoom as an audio device. So if it's done that, I might be able to.
Hey,
Oops.
as you're looking at that,
Hmm.
Marcus has an interesting question there. If you've ever tried to generate real time visuals to your music with Max MSP and Jitter.
Oh, yeah. So that's a very good question. And that's something that I was going to get onto is that I'm really heavily involved in playing with visualizations at the moment. I just write the stuff in vanilla JavaScript, and I use a lot of CSS custom properties to kind of make
Sure.
it easy. Um, I tell you what, forget me trying to play that piano because I think
Yeah,
Logic's gonna have a problem with that anyway.
of
I'll
course.
show you. I made a few slides about it,
Cool.
just to sort of ease into it. Can you see that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we have the web audio API plus components plus animations.
Yeah, so
All right.
these are like my favorite three things at the moment is
It's a great
CSS
cocktail. This is
animation,
cool.
web components, and I'm trying to combine them all together in a
Yeah.
fairly messy, clumsy way. You'll see some of the slightly well, not very neat or object-oriented code, but yeah,
We will
so
hold it against you, don't worry.
so in the web audio API, it's like modular synthesis. So you
Okay.
have you basically have modules which you plug into each other. So one would be some kind of oscillator, one might be like then an effect. I kind of in my head it's like a pedal board for a guitarist.
Yes.
Because I play guitar in a band. I don't actually have a pedal board anymore because I've got a multi-effects box. But
Same here.
but yeah, it's
Yeah.
just like one thing into another, and then the signal gets augmented
Oh,
through the chain, right? But
yep.
then you also have this analyzer node. Um, and an analyzer node, you can kind of inject somewhere in the signal chain
It's a
and it will just
manipulation, right?
output data. Sorry?
So it's a manipulation of the wave is what we're adding in
No,
here.
in this, normally a module would manipulate the wave, yeah. But
Okay.
in this case, the analyzer node just represents the
Oh,
wave as
I see.
data.
Gotcha.
Hence so that's your basis for your visualization using the web audio API, basically.
Got it.
So it comes out like this. So in this case, I've got 16 frequency bands that I'm telling it. You can, it's multiples of 8, or it's multiples of
Yeah.
16. 16's more than enough for me, right? And each one is out of 255. Um, and so each one, this is like the level of that frequent, like the amplitude of each frequency band. Um, and so from the music, you can send events, um, And
Yeah.
then the event you can listen to in your DOM, and then you can react to it and do some sort of animation with it, right? So
Yeah.
just fire a custom event and it will have the frequency, and then the this dot volume in this case is just, it's an average of all of the frequency band
Oh, okay.
amplitude. So you just get like an overall volume for the sound, which is
Gotcha.
sometimes useful. So I'll just chuck that in as well. And that's just a function for doing that. But then when you've got these events, you're in
Yeah.
JavaScript, right? And you've got these
Sure.
events, and you could just do some stuff with those events just in JavaScript itself. But for me, I prefer working with CSS. I just prefer,
Yes.
if I can work in CSS, I will. So instead, I give it to CSS. And the way I do that is, as you
Interesting.
probably imagine, with custom properties, right?
Yeah.
Custom properties are really good for that kind of thing. So I've got these two custom elements. I've got an emitter element, and that you'd have like your audio file inside it, and that's just a beat at the moment. And
Yeah.
then you have the receiver, and in this case, the receiver is what I call the CSS receiver,
Okay.
and that matches the ID for this emitter, and then that's when you convert stuff into your
Interesting.
custom properties. So you just iterate over your bands. It's just like really
Yeah.
basic kind of ES5 type stuff.
Sure.
Uh, and then set the property to the
Oh, that's
frequency
so
band
cool.
here like this. And so then you can so it'll now look like this in CSS.
Oh my
Although
God.
realistically it'll look like this because it's constantly
Sure.
updating as the sound.
Updating.
So
Yeah.
it can be quite intensive. So there's ways of like optimizing the performance for that.
Oh,
But so
absolutely.
then you've got that. You can just play with those custom properties, right? And you can do whatever animations you like.
Nice.
You just need some elements to animate.
That's
So
it.
like the really
Yeah.
basic version would be, so for every frequency band, you find the nth child which matches the band, and then
Okay.
use the calc with the height for
The
100% to do like a bar. So
got
it'll
it.
be like this, right?
I see.
It's
Oh,
really basic visualization, but just
yeah,
a
but it demonstrates the point and the concept,
mm,
extremely well, because it creates that linkage between the data that we have available and how we can consume it and apply it. So
right.
that to me, I would have never known, like, how do you transcribe a frequency into a bar, like that
Yeah.
seems like odd to me. But
So
yeah.
I'll try and play you the beat if
Yeah.
hopefully this will actually play back now, because I'm not in
Sure.
Logic. Logic has real trouble with like actual audio modules and stuff.
Sure.
But let's try it.
No beat, it's all good, but I see it moving. Let's
Do it over mic instead. Can you hear that?
see. Barely in the background, like
Yeah.
faint. If I turn up, it's like a little hit. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's
that's a shame. I thought we had that running okay. Maybe it's something to do with my audio
is it
uh
is the
output
is
is,
the share sound option selected in
oh,
the
maybe I've lost the share sound option. Let me just go back
maybe.
into advanced. Yeah, I lost it for some reason.
Oh, I blame Zoom.
Yeah. So can you still see my screen?
Not right now. You have to do a fresh share.
Oh, okay. I don't think it will let me share the screen and share computer
Ah,
audio at the
bummer.
same time.
Bummer. That's
Yeah.
okay.
Well, hang on. Let me try again. So I'm
Yeah,
sharing
okay.
audio now. I've hit that. And now if I go share basic desktop 2 and I hit share again,
Sharing's
hopefully
giving you
it
a
might
hard
work
time down
now.
there. There we go. I hear.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
I heard it for just a second. Then it went away.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah. We work on the web. Yeah, we totally do.
well, you kind of get the idea with it anyway. It's a
Oh
drum
yeah,
beat, and we're visualizing it. But it's a basic, so the yeah, as you said, because it's now in custom properties,
yeah.
you're not bound to just doing this visualization. You can do whatever the hell you like, and just in CSS, you don't have to write any more JavaScript.
No, because at
Although
this point, all the functions we have can do some like pretty incredible stuff with this, I imagine.
yeah, well, I'll show you some more advanced
Yeah.
examples in a minute, but But the
Oh, here
one
we
thing
go.
I wanted to change though, to make it even easier, is that when you're like transposing it to each element, we were talking about doing like infchild one, infchild two, blah, blah,
Yep.
blah, like that for ages. That gets really boring, right? Especially if you've got more than 16 frequency bands.
Oh yeah.
So instead, you can just for each, you can just grab the child elements, and then each one just give it a generic frequency level
Yeah.
custom property, and then assign the custom property because it will inherit from the parent
Sure.
anyway. Actually, no, it doesn't even use inheritance. It doesn't need to, but you
Oh.
just assign that custom property to this custom property. And then
Mm.
all you have to write to do that animation is this CSS because it's just, using the child and then wildcard selector, and then it's just the frequency level
You
like
and
that.
the
And that does
universal
the same thing.
selector, man. You have a long history with that universal selector. I know.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. The owl selector
yep.
thing, yeah.
Exactly. No.
But yeah,
Now,
so yeah, you can just do that now. So then it gets much more powerful. Yeah.
now,
Um,
as a bit of a non sequitur type thing. Well, I mean, maybe it is. Like in CSS, we have different types of length units, and that even includes frequencies. Like does that play into any of this at all?
oh yeah, that's a really good question. So in this case, I didn't explain it actually. It's a good thing you asked. But in this case, all I'm doing, you remember that each frequency band, the amplitude is out of 255. Now I
Yes.
forget why it's 255, but it's a historical thing.
It's a color.
But
It's in the RGB color space. That's why.
right, right. Because you have that LSD thing where you're seeing
Yeah,
you're seeing
exactly.
sound. Yeah, yeah.
Colors and
What's
sound
that called?
together, man.
Um, what's that called? That hmm. Synesthesia, isn't it? When you can see sound, or
Oh,
you can hear images, or
no, I
yeah.
always just think of onomatopoeia, as far as like,
Yeah,
the like personification of sounds right in there.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
color
yeah.
sounds.
But
Yep.
no, I have a little bit of synesthesia. Like if the color of an album cover, like colors how the music sounds to me, and that kind
Yeah.
of thing, which is only a slight thing. But what was I saying? Yeah, oh yeah. So it's out of 255. So what I do is I just do the actual frequency
Yep.
divided by 255 to get a proportion, just to
Oh,
get a float between 0 and 1. So it'll
yeah.
be like 0.5 or 0.75, because then it works as a multiplier then for
Yes.
anything, for any kind of
That makes
property.
sense.
So for example, like so here's a version where I'm using circles. And
Interesting.
in this case, I'm using padding to change the size of the circle. So
I
you
mean,
probably won't hear this again, but there's a circly thing instead.
oh my gosh. I like
Um,
and again, I just want to put a punk like an emphasis point on the like this is like sound informing visual, like
hmm,
that's so freaking cool to think about that. Like you're saying, I'm gonna base padding off of a frequency, like that to me
yeah,
is
yeah,
like it's just mind blowing on its own. That when I see frequency level in your padding declaration, I go,
yeah,
what? Wait, that's not
yeah,
right, because that's not a
yeah,
visual, that's a sound. That's so
yeah.
fascinating.
I mean, it's still, pretty rudimentary
Yeah.
visualization stuff, but it's, just a bit of mixed blend mode. So
Yeah.
if you use the mixed blend mode difference, I use that a lot in these visualizations, because then you get the
Yes.
thing behind it shows through, because it's
Yep.
it's calculating the difference between them.
Yeah.
And I always work with black and white, so that makes that kind of stuff
Makes it a
a
lot
lot.
easier.
Yeah. But then you can start, because you've got this
Oh my
frequency level,
gosh.
start adding it to other stuff. So you can do. I was just playing with this a little bit, but
Yeah.
you can I do a rotate transform here.
What?
So you could do the calc inside the rotate, and then the border radius,
Oh
and then
my
you get this
gosh.
kind of op art type thing like this. So you can see it going. Oh,
Oh man, this could have been
I'm not sure
straight
it's
on
going to
the
play.
album cover of a 70s, like release.
Yeah.
Like, so cool.
Hang on. Ah, here we go. Like this. So it looks a bit more like this.
Oh, that's
Um,
neat. And
yeah.
it
So
and it feels at random, almost, in in a sense,
Yeah,
but
so
it's following that frequency at the same time.
yeah, depending on the sound source that you're using, it may be more or less obvious that it's kind of actually in sync. Like that is in sync, but so here's the thing. The trouble is that the frequency data can sometimes be a bit too uniform, or if the sound is
Sure.
really compressed because
Yes. Oh yeah.
it's been like
Your peaks and
mastered.
valleys. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so then the peaks and troughs aren't very much. So then you don't see actually much difference, and therefore it doesn't look like much is going on, or that it's
Sure.
particularly in sync. And that's why I was going to say back here, you have these different ways of smoothing
Smoothing.
the
Oh,
the
interesting.
output. So this is like what it looks like if it's just coming through raw.
Okay.
It's at 60 frames per second or as fast as your browser can go. And it's
Copy.
updating every 60. So it looks really jerky, right?
It looks
But the
like
good thing about
DevTools.
doing it that way, yeah. But the good thing about doing it that way is that at least you do see all of these differences in
Yes,
you see dramatic changes going on because it's updating so quickly.
absolutely.
Um, Now, the analyzer node itself actually comes with this property, smoothing time constant. And that's what I was using in that visualization, which is why it didn't look that much like it was changing. So
Yeah.
on my custom, on my, sorry, on my web component, I'm using this smoothie and it was at 0.9. So you can see it
Yeah.
moves more smoothly, which is more
Uh-huh.
like pleasing to the eye in a lot of ways. But you,
Sure.
because it averages out, it doesn't show as much
Choppy, like update.
disparity.
Sure.
Yeah, and so then you don't get as much from it. So what I've actually programmed into this custom element instead is the
Oh,
ability
frames
to
per
set the
second.
frames per second. So in this
Gotcha.
case, what's happening is that it's only sending the event with the frequency information
Okay.
8 times a second. But then I'm using a CSS transition to kind
Hmm.
of draw in the gaps, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
So
And
it's actually
linear
a
makes a
lot
lot of
less
sense here.
intensive.
Yeah.
Mm. So you can see it's smooth because of that, but
Yep.
it's smooth in a way that you're still getting like the full range. So that's
Sure.
just something I was experimenting with to try and get that to kind of get a good happy medium between the two.
I'll also
Um,
just call out the use of the millisecond unit there. That's that's cool that you're using a different type of unit. Most times we're gonna be like, oh, we'll do it in like a 0.01 second or something, but
oh
we
right,
can
yeah.
forget that there's sub units of those that like can get us finer detail without doing the mental math.
Yeah, I mean, in this case, it's really just because I need to convert the value into
Yeah.
milliseconds because so I didn't explain. So this interval custom property, that's I mean, I guess that's in this case that's an eighth of a second.
Gotcha.
Or it's converted into milliseconds, but it works out as an eighth of a second. So you know that the transition is for the exact duration between the events. So you know
Yes.
that movement is going to actually be,
Oof.
the right amount sort of thing.
Now,
Yeah.
now, for just a second, like I want to take this back to like learning and like experimentation for just a second, because this is all a bunch of stuff where like in my head I'm like, wow, you're piecing together a lot of concepts that like must have had to take some like forethought to be like, okay, now I need to convert this to this. Like, what kind of like ingredients do I need to like make that happen?
Yeah.
And how much trial and error did you have to go? Because you make this look so freaking cool, but also like, oh yeah, I just did this with this, but there must have been some
Yeah.
frustrating times of like, like I think I almost get this, but I don't. Like what
Yeah,
were some what
absolutely.
were some areas that you really bumped into with this?
Yeah, I mean, this was one of them was
Yeah,
like, how do you make the most of the frequency data, but
yeah,
like you're balancing that against the performance, right?
yep,
And trying to get like a happy medium there. Yeah, that took a lot of tweaking and experimenting and basically refreshing the browser lots of times uh, to to um, to kind of like get to this point. But I think I like when working with not yeah, working with custom elements, working with web components, it's easy to just go, hey, what if I had control over this parameter? And if I had control over this parameter, I wonder if it'll help me. So
Yeah.
I I I programmed in the frames per second thing, and
Yep.
then like sometimes you do that and you think, well, actually, this isn't making any difference. This isn't really helping the situation at all. And then maybe you leave it in there anyway, and it becomes useful
Yeah.
later for something else. But
Sure.
yeah, in this case, it kind of helped. And then, of course, with the smoothing thing, sometimes maybe you can combine the two. I
Yeah.
think this is the case with a lot of like audio-based stuff. Really, like the best visual results when you're visualizing audio is really a feel thing. Like there's no
Yeah.
like uh optimal numbers that someone can give you. You
There's
just
no
need to
prescription there. Yeah.
calibrate kind of live. Yeah. So actually, I mean, maybe making myself a version of this where I have some slider inputs so I can adjust those
Yeah.
things to get it would be
Well,
a nice
like a
thing.
boombox almost. You got dials that you can,
Yeah, yeah,
like
exactly.
tweak things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just like a synthesizer where
Oh
you
yeah,
would just
absolutely.
like
Create your own
filter and
mixing
yeah.
board, like absolutely.
Mm,
Yeah,
exactly.
how
Yeah.
neat.
I did another visualization. It was
Oh,
like a
color. I was going to ask you about color.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't do color.
I
I
know,
thought
black and white.
it would be funny. I thought it'd be
Well,
fun to
actually,
just show.
white is all color, right? So basically, you just work in all color. Is
You're true. I work in all color and no color. Yeah,
and
but
all and
never
nothing at
in
once.
between. Yeah, but but yeah. So this was just to show like what it would be like if you wanted to play with color. Again, it's
Yeah.
because it's using the mixed blend mode difference. There's only red, green, and blue assigned to different frequency bands or different
Yes.
circles. But of course, because you're showing now with colors, you're showing the difference between the color. It's all of that kind of color theory stuff is coming into it, and you're
Yeah.
getting loads of different colors. But it was really just also to show that you got the you can use this like hue rotate. I mean, you can add animations on top of, so you can have
Oh,
which
maybe. Oh,
just
lost
running
you.
anyway, just just oscillating away by themselves just for the hell of
Yeah.
it, and you can do that with the uh I set a
See,
frequency index here. So you can, if you have like a different index on each element, then you can use that as a multiplier too,
it's
and that
constantly
deals
updating
with
and you're changing the hue, which means you're getting, like a fresh kind of color cycle throughout this, and it's going to be like
exactly, hence
perceptively
like
consistent. Yeah.
yeah, so hence it's kind of like Winampy. So I put a
Yeah.
blur filter on
The old cold
it.
fusion days. Yeah, totally. Uh,
Yeah, wow,
oh,
yeah. But it's like, yeah, so I blurred it to make it look kind of 90s as well. So you get this
oh man, this is
thing
like
going
so
on.
much fun though.
It's kind of,
The like you start with like bars and then you just show how like with
mm,
just a few css properties really you're just updating values and saying maybe we just you set this on padding, maybe we set this on transform, maybe we set this on whatever else, and you can see how like you can
yeah,
visually manipulate sound, and that to me is just like again where it gets super mind-blowing because we're working with like two different like senses
yeah,
together,
yeah,
and usually we're just working in one thing, and with css we're usually concerned with the visual medium of things, but when you start incorporating
mm,
sound, how fascinating that like we can actually paint with this stuff.
yeah, yeah. I think, I mean, I got interested in this, I guess, because I started making videos for the Webbed Brief stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and and so I started writing my own music for it, and it is sometimes it would be like an ambient bed
Yep.
to just go under my narration, partly to take out. It helps sort of make my voice sound better. It like takes out some of the imperfections of the voice.
It just
Like if
auto
I've
tunes
cut
you. Yeah.
a couple of takes and there's a little click between them or whatever, it helps with that, but also gives it sets a mood. But then I've
Sure.
got into this thing where, like in the last video I did, it will be like a basic, like kind of ambient thing behind it most of the way throughout until it gets to
Yeah.
the credits, and then I'll drop like a beat behind it or something. So it
Yep.
becomes like, when I make those videos, I'd write a piece of music first with enough space. And this is why I only release a video like once every 6 months, and
Oh
it's
yeah,
like
I
a
was going to ask you. You took
five
like an
minute
11-month hiatus or hiatus between the last two. I mean, that was a
yeah.
long gap.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I got busy doing other things, but also it does take a long time to make
Oh
those videos.
gosh.
I tried to start doing like even shorter ones. The thing is, like, I got into this mindset of I need to have a cadence. I need to release more of these, and then
Oh
hopefully
no.
I'll get, more people will see them. Then it will get more
Yeah.
momentum. I'll get more viewers. It might even be monetizable. And then I
Yeah.
thought, actually, the thing I'm really interested in doing is creating these little art pieces where I put as much into them as I can, and that's always going to be
Absolutely.
like take forever. But and I'm never it's never probably going to get much traction. But what's
Oh
nice is
yeah.
that the few people who do watch them seem
It
to go be like,
sticks.
oh wow, this is much more so than they would if I was releasing one every week. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, I've just sort of given into the fact that yeah, I think I am not going to be releasing that regularly, but when I do, hopefully it will be memorable
Well,
for a few people who see it. So,
it's hard to argue with the quality at the end of it. I mean, your last one for those who haven't seen it, and haven't seen. I'm sure you have the "What is React" videos, the one that made the most recent, and actually, if I can just change topics for just a moment because we
yeah,
only have a couple minutes.
sure.
Now, now you mentioned that well actually before we got on the call we were talking a bit about like what happens when you share something and it goes outside your like inner circle of people that you know because there's that like that contextual feedback that from people who have seen your stuff but before and they get the whole context behind it but then once it bleeds out like let's say it gets picked up on Hacker News or something all of a
Mm,
sudden the audience is like way more ecumenical and maybe you weren't trying to write something like that. It was a very nichey piece. So when you write
yeah.
something as like what is React with a lot of triggers in there that I mean I say that as politely as possible because you do have some very curt descriptions of like what React is and who's behind React and what the
Mm.
motives behind those things are. What sort of response do you get and like does like I just get the sense that like you're like you have the skin of a rhinoceros, man. It's like 3 feet thick or something, like how does that work for you?
Um, yeah, so first of all, the thing about the React one is that I did expect there to be quite a backlash about that.
Mhm.
Um, uh, because it is, it's a contentious topic. But actually, in that case, it was very, very little of people, complaining about, what I was saying about React or what I was saying about Facebook or whatever. And that I found that kind of curious because I've done much less. I've done things where I've pulled way more punches, and
Yeah.
it's been much more controversial. So I don't quite understand why it didn't have that impact. I'm kind of relieved it
Yeah.
didn't because that kind of thing can become a real pain, obviously. But what was interesting, of course, to me, so the whole point of that video was to put like React in the context of Facebook
Oh yeah.
and Facebook's, questionable ethics and all, and the politics of
Or
the whole
or
organization.
Meta, right? Yeah, there's no Facebook parent company now, right? Because it's a
Right,
brand
yeah.
new thing. Changes
Yeah, yeah.
everything.
Well, yeah, I think they were trying to run away from their own name a bit
Yes.
there. But the yeah, and so the few kind of like complaints that I did get or people like criticizing the video, it was kind of interesting. And I kind of set them up for this, but they were complaining about the specifics of what I was saying about React, the technology,
Interesting.
but not addressing
Not the
like the
politics.
major points in the video, which were about like Facebook being responsible for fomenting genocide in Myanmar and things like that. So it's just
Oh
like, oh no, we're
yeah.
not going to talk about Myanmar then. We're just going to talk about the fact that actually Create React app is no longer the popular tool for scaffolding your React application.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
okay,
like,
that wrong.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, we're not caring about up to the minute news about React here. It's like it's the principle and the concept as a whole, like, And boy,
Exactly. Yeah.
you are linking them to some strong political, events and like factors, and that can get a rise out of people. And it takes a lot of courage to put a thing out there like that, knowing
Well,
that it's going to flame a bit.
I mean, yeah, maybe. I think it's an easy thing to just talk about stuff, right? I think the
Yeah.
people who are like really putting themselves out there are actually like, they're fighting stuff. They're actually,
Yes.
rioting and stuff like that. But
Putting things out there. Yes.
but it does interest me that when people do get really upset with stuff, I say it is usually about the minutiae about the technology
Interesting.
and not about the political context that I put it in. They don't.
That's
They
really
just
interesting
switch
to
off
me.
to the
It's
politics stuff,
Yeah, that
and
seems like the less personal side of it to me, those like
yeah,
specifics. It's funny that that gets touched more.
yeah. And I just think people have different priorities. I guess is a way to put it as well. Yeah. Um.
Absolutely. Oh,
Sure.
I just saw Dad
Hey.
hop on here.
Hello, children.
Hello.
Oh, run,
Have
run,
you had
run.
a pleasant hour chatting, boys?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
we
played
have.
nicely. It was good.
Good. I've been, there's been stuff going on my screen and boom boxes without music, and I felt very inspired. So that was a very good thing, and it was
Nothing more
really, I mean,
inspiring than a
I
boombox without music.
probably. Um, no, it was amazing to A, see you do some work again, and B, just
Yes.
see you again, Hayden, because for me, I
Likewise,
have
yeah.
had the pleasure to actually meet you in person, but that's been
In
I
Hong Kong
Hong Kong, yeah.
Yes, that's
a
right.
long time ago.
Um,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
if we
I,
if we
I
talk
really
about
enjoyed that trip. It was really good hanging out
yeah,
with you. Yeah.
nice, yeah, I love that as well. But if we talk about in-person rising, then that's that's where that happens or happened.
Hmm.
Anyway, amazing to see you again. I just wanna end up with saying that this is not the only event that we're doing. For the people who are still here, we've got a free workshop with Vitaly starting now. So you need to sign up really, really quickly. And then on Thursday, we have Smashing Meets, where you can see three designers designing live with some challenges that we do, which is really cool. Pablo Stanley, Christine Villar, and Oliver Schoendorfer. And obviously, we have online workshops and in-person conferences all coming up. So yeah, lots of stuff happening in the Smashing universe. For now, I want to thank both Jeff and Hayden so much for your time, your awesome work. Keep it up. Keep being cool.
You
And
too.
hope to see you again soon.
Thanks, y'all. So good to see you.
Yeah, thanks both
And
of you.
meet you
Thanks
finally,
everyone for
Hayden.
coming.
Finally.
Yes, yeah, good to meet you. Cheers.